Vladimir Putin's rise is deeply intertwined with the story of modern Russia's transformation. Few leaders in recent history have left such a profound mark on their nation, and even fewer have become as synonymous with their country's identity as Putin has with Russia. His journey from relative obscurity to the pinnacle of power is not just the tale of one man, but the story of a nation struggling to redefine itself after the collapse of an empire. Emerging from the chaos and uncertainty of the 1990s, when Russia was plagued by economic collapse, rampant crime, and political instability, Putin promised a new era of stability. For millions of Russians, his arrival signaled hope. He delivered on many of those promises, restoring a sense of order and national pride that had been lost in the turbulent years following the Soviet Union's dissolution. The streets that once echoed with uncertainty began to see signs of renewal, and the Russian people, weary from years of hardship, looked to Putin as a stabilizing force. Putin's ascent was anything but accidental. His rise was methodical and calculated, shaped by years of service as a KGB officer, where he learned the intricacies of power, loyalty, and control. These skills would serve him well as he transitioned into politics, first in St. Petersburg, and then on the national stage. By the late 1990s, he had become the face of Russia's resurgence, a symbol of strength and resolve in a country desperate for direction. Born into the Soviet Union, Putin grew up in a world defined by ideological struggle and superpower rivalry. He witnessed firsthand the collapse of the Soviet system, a seismic event that would shape his worldview and fuel his determination to restore Russia's place on the global stage. The hardships and lessons of his youth instilled in him a deep sense of patriotism and a belief in the necessity of a strong, centralized state. Putin's climb through the ranks of power was quiet yet relentless. In the shadowy corridors of St. Petersburg city government, he mastered the art of political maneuvering, building alliances and outmaneuvering rivals. His reputation for efficiency and loyalty caught the attention of those in Moscow, paving the way for his rapid ascent to the highest offices in the land. By the time he entered the Kremlin, he was already a seasoned operator, ready to reshape Russia's destiny. Once in power, Putin moved swiftly to centralize authority. He tamed the oligarchs who had amassed vast fortunes during the chaotic privatizations of the 1990s, bringing them to heel or driving them into exile. Independent media outlets were shuttered or brought under state control, and dissenting voices found themselves increasingly marginalized. Through a combination of legal reforms, political pressure, and sheer force of will, Putin consolidated his grip on the levers of power, transforming Russia into a state where loyalty to the Kremlin was paramount. For over 2 decades, Putin has been the central figure in Russian politics, overseeing wars in Chechnya, Georgia, and Ukraine, and challenging the global order with bold moves on the world stage. His leadership has been marked by a willingness to use military force, assert Russia's interests abroad, and defy Western expectations. Under his rule, Russia has reasserted itself as a major player in international affairs, often at odds with the West. To his supporters, Putin is a strong leader who has restored national pride, rebuilt the military, and returned Russia to greatness. They see him as a protector of traditional values and a bulwark against foreign interference, a man who stands up for Russia's interests no matter the cost. His popularity, especially among older generations and those nostalgic for Soviet-era stability, remains formidable. To his critics, however, Putin is an autocrat who has dismantled the fragile democracy that emerged in the 1990s. They accuse him of stifling dissent, manipulating elections, and using state power to silence opposition. Internationally, he is often portrayed as a threat to democratic values and a destabilizing force in global politics. The divide between his supporters and detractors is stark, reflecting the broader tensions within Russian society. The journey of Vladimir Putin, from a modest KGB office in Leningrad to the gilded halls of the Kremlin, is a crucial chapter in the history of modern Russia. His legacy is complex, marked by both achievements and controversies, and his influence will be felt for generations to come. Whether seen as a savior or a strongman, Putin's story is inseparable from the story of Russia itself. Vladimir Putin's story begins in the heart of Leningrad, a city now known as St. Petersburg, where he was born in 1952. At that time, the city was still scarred by the devastation of World War II, its people marked by both loss and resilience. The streets were lined with the echoes of history, and the air was thick with the determination of those rebuilding their lives from the ashes of conflict. Putin grew up in a cramped communal apartment, a typical arrangement for many Soviet families in the post-war years. These apartments were more than just living spaces. They were microcosms of Soviet society, where several families shared kitchens, bathrooms, and even the smallest joys and sorrows. In this environment, young Vladimir learned the value of patience, adaptability, and above all, resilience. His parents, both survivors of the brutal siege of Leningrad, instilled in him a deep sense of perseverance and the importance of never giving up, no matter how dire the circumstances. Childhood for Putin was far from easy. The courtyards of Leningrad became his playground and his school. Here, surrounded by the faded facades of old buildings, he learned to fend for himself. The games played by the children were often rough, and the rules were simple. Only the strong and clever thrived. These early experiences taught him self-reliance and the necessity of standing up for oneself in a world that could be unforgiving. Fights among boys were a common occurrence in these courtyards. For Putin, these skirmishes were more than just childhood scuffles. They were lessons in survival. He quickly learned that if conflict was inevitable, it was better to strike first and show strength, rather than become a target. This mindset, forged in the rough-and-tumble world of Leningrad's backyards, would later shape his approach to challenges in adulthood. Seeking discipline and a constructive outlet for his energy, Putin turned to judo. The martial art became more than just a sport for him, it was a way of life. Through countless hours of training, he developed not only physical strength but also mental focus, patience, and respect for opponents. The lessons he learned on the mat, about strategy, timing, and self-control, would become guiding principles throughout his life. Even as a boy, Putin's ambitions reached far beyond the courtyards. He was captivated by Soviet spy films, which depicted secret agents as heroes defending their country from unseen threats. These movies sparked his imagination and planted the seeds of a dream to one day join the ranks of the KGB, the elite Soviet security service. The allure of espionage, with its promise of adventure and service to the motherland, became a driving force in his young life. Determined to make his dream a reality, Putin pursued a law degree at Leningrad State University. The university was a prestigious institution, attracting some of the brightest minds of the era. Here, he immersed himself in his studies, building the foundation for a future in public service and espionage. Surrounded by ambitious peers and guided by influential professors, Putin's path was set, one that would eventually lead him from the courtyards of Leningrad to the highest echelons of power. In 1975, a young Vladimir Putin took his first steps into the shadowy world of Soviet intelligence by joining the KGB, the powerful and secretive security agency that shaped the fate of the Soviet Union for decades. For Putin, this was not just a job, it was a calling, a chance to serve his country from behind the scenes, where the real levers of power were pulled. Stepping into this clandestine realm, Putin entered a world defined by secrecy, loyalty, and the constant battle for information. The corridors of the KGB headquarters buzzed with whispered conversations, coded messages, and the ever-present tension of espionage. Here, trust was rare, and betrayal could come from any corner. In his early years, stationed in his hometown of Leningrad, Putin honed his skills in counterintelligence. His work demanded meticulous attention to detail, tracking foreign agents, intercepting communications, and protecting state secrets. Every day was a test of patience and cunning, as he learned to navigate the complex web of Soviet security. A significant turning point came when Putin was assigned to Dresden, East Germany. This foreign posting was more than just a change of scenery, it was a career milestone that exposed him to the front lines of the Cold War. In Dresden, he operated in a tense environment, where the stakes were high and the line between friend and foe was often blurred. As the 1980s drew to a close, the Soviet bloc began to unravel. Putin witnessed firsthand the growing unrest, the protests in the streets, and the collapse of state authority that once seemed unshakable. The world he had trained to defend was changing rapidly, and the old certainties were slipping away. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 was a seismic event, a symbol of hope for millions but also a stark reminder of the fragility of power. For Putin, it was a moment of reckoning, revealing how quickly empires could crumble and how vulnerable even the most powerful institutions could be. As Soviet forces withdrew and KGB offices were abandoned, Putin found himself isolated, cut off from Moscow's support. In this moment of chaos, he learned a crucial lesson: that only strong, centralized control could prevent the kind of collapse he had just witnessed. This experience would shape his worldview and his future ambitions for years to come. The Soviet Union's collapse in 1991 was a personal and professional crisis for Putin. Returning to St. Petersburg, he transitioned from espionage to politics. As an advisor to Mayor Anatoly Sobchak, he proved himself a discreet administrator. Navigating the chaotic post-Soviet landscape, he learned the art of power. When Sobchak lost re-election, Putin's career seemed stalled. However, his reputation for loyalty led to a mid-level Kremlin position, a foothold in Moscow. Putin's arrival in Moscow in 1996 was unremarkable, yet pivotal. Working in the Kremlin's property management, he gained insight into state assets. His quiet competence stood out in Yeltsin's turbulent Kremlin. By 1998, he was head of the FSB, consolidating influence within the security services. As Yeltsin's health declined, Putin emerged as a potential successor. In 1999, Yeltsin appointed him prime minister, setting the stage for his ascent. As prime minister, Putin faced immediate challenges, including apartment bombings. His decisive response and tough rhetoric resonated with a fearful public. The Second Chechen War bolstered his image as a strong leader. On New Year's Eve 1999, Yeltsin resigned, making Putin acting president. His campaign projected strength and stability, leading to a decisive election victory. The Putin era had officially begun, with a focus on restoring Russia's greatness. In the Kremlin, Putin swiftly consolidated power, centralizing control. He reined in regional governors and subdued oligarchs, ending their political influence. The media landscape was reshaped, with state-controlled narratives dominating. By the end of his first term, Putin had forged a new political order centered on his authority. Putin's rule is marked by longevity and strategic maneuvering. In 2008, he became prime minister, maintaining power through a tandem with Medvedev. Returning as president in 2012, he faced protests but tightened control. Annexing Crimea in 2014 boosted his popularity, asserting Russia's global influence. A 2020 constitutional overhaul allows him to remain president until 2036, solidifying his legacy. Putin's tenure has reshaped Russia, delivering stability and national pride. Supporters view him as a patriot who restored the nation, while critics see an autocrat. His legacy is contested, with stability achieved at the cost of freedom. He has positioned Russia as a key geopolitical actor, challenging the post-Cold War order. The system he built raises questions about Russia's future after Putin, a testament to his enduring influence.